action. Hello? Is this thing on? Great. Anyways. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. After a few weeks after uploading my recent video, I recently remembered posting asking for suggestions on who to power scale. And I had some pretty good and unheard of suggestions, emphasized on some. Megamind is a good pick, but also had recent scales by different persons, so I ought to make that one someday. To the rest of the people who suggested the options in the comment section, I am so sorry for keeping you waiting. What I had in mind was that after uploading my gaming video and Jurassic franchise ranking video, which, spoiler alert, doesn't involve the big four, I will solely create videos with your suggestions in the comments from that post. But let's get that out of the way and head into the topic in mind. Is the Frost Vark and George a close matchup? Would it be overkill, or would it be closer than we think? Let's find out. Begin with the Frost Vark and only ever appeared on screen in the episodes Secrets and Lies, Perils and Interiors, and Will the Real Mary Please Stand Up on Season 1, Monarch Legacy of Monsters, before its final appearance in Will the Real Mary Please Stand Up, where its fate was still unknown. Ever since then, it has received toys from Playmates under the brand of Godzilla X Kong The New Empire, marking it the first Frost Vark toy in a while after its debut in 2023. Getting into its physical feats that will lead to his attack potency, and yes, I will be calling Frost Vark a he, that we will eventually get into a sensible level of power to determine whether or not he will be a match for George. There isn't much to begin with other than the fact that the Frost Vark crushed a plane that at the very least would be into small building level and would potentially be higher, but this was after the Frost Vark had absorbed the heat within the plane, which caused it to freeze, which made it easier to destroy, therefore knocking away the possibility that the Frost Vark is anywhere above small building level, with GBE and getting it to around the same level as his physical attack potency. And that is pretty much it for the Frost Vark's attack potency. His speed is obscure since we could only interpret it that it will be around superhuman VIA sheer size, but it wasn't his physicals or speed that made it a deadly creature. It was his ability to bubble very quickly with the use of bull-like claws, with his heat absorption, and with thermal location. And that is pretty much it for the Frost Vark, and I'm pretty sure that George, the albino giant gorilla, has more interesting feats to go over to. Unlike the Frost Vark, who only appeared for a few episodes in a singular season, George was one of the 3-star monsters on the movie Rampage, released in 2018 and based on the video game with the same name from 1986. He was originally an albino gorilla who was saved from poachers by Davis before years later grew to tremendous size thanks to a device called Project Rampage. He's long appeared in video games and comics. Getting into his physical stats, most of his attack potency, even before growing into a large size, was capable enough to burst through walls without injury, making himself comfortable between the walls' small building level range quite easily. But it could grow stronger and bigger, as later on in the movie, George was one of the 3 monsters who tackled onto a skyscraper, with Lizzie performing the most damage, brought it down, and was shown to easily survive despite the fall, and has also shown toppling over buildings quite easily. However, it was easily shown that he is outclassed by Lizzie in terms of strength, therefore he is weaker than Lizzie. If it wasn't for George to utilize the rod Lizzie threw him right into her eye and ultimately killed her. With his fight with Ralph, the Flying Wolf actually managed to pin George down after a little tussle before Davis lured it into Lizzie's jaws. So consistently, he has shown building level feats and possibly above. Not bad for a giant albino gorilla. Speed-wise for the giant gorilla, it was implied that the mutation would give him cheetah speed with his sheer size alone. Somewhere around superhuman, but for his reaction speeds, he evaded rapid gunfire from jets, which resulted around supersonic levels of speed. But he has other interesting highlights such as his intelligence, seemingly able to communicate with Davis with hand gestures, you all know that one, able to understand fear, sadness, grief, and is smart enough to use makeshift weapons, as shown a few times during the fight between Lizzie and George. This would probably wrap up George's sets, so how will we compare with the Frost Vark? So for this matchup, in my opinion, I think George would take the wave with at least mid difficulty, since the Frost Vark isn't much of a challenge, at least in terms of physical strength. But the only reason this isn't a slaughter is the Frost Vark's saving grace, his heat absorption. This would be a bit of a problem since one suck would deal great damage to George. However, George might be intellectual enough to understand the attack and instead utilize a makeshift weapon into giving the Frost Vark the final blow. This will conclude for today's video. I will do more of these requests in the future as long as I finish making and uploading my own videos onto the platform. Anyways, that'll be all from me, and I'll see you all next time.